everyone, a very good evening and a very warm welcome to today's session. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fine and amazingly well. बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपका आज के सेशन में. नमस्कार, सत श्री अकाल, bonjour, आदाब. Let's get started with the last session of our chapter Forest Society and Colonialism, where we are going to talk about the transformation of the forest that took in Java, Indonesia under the colonized government over there. So let's get started. Hi बच्चों, hi Tarun, hi Drushti, hi Kavita. Let me quickly introduce myself. Hi Evelyn, good evening. So बच्चों, मेरा नाम अंकना है and I am your expert for social sciences at Imbibe. I've been teaching for more than 9 years now and have finished my studies in the field of humanities. And I've had the wonderful opportunity to be able to interact and teach the students of CBSE and ICC board both online and offline. And I specialize in social science and English. Now talking about the chapter that we are doing right now, किन हिस्सों में बटा हुआ है वो, what are the topics that the entire chapter can broadly be divided into? So the very first one is deforestation, ठीक है, which happened in India. What is deforestation and how it happened in India during the colonial rule? Then we spoke about the rise of commercial forestry. We took 2 sessions to understand this. Then we looked at the rebellion that was happening under the, of course, in the forest of Bastar. But similarly, it helped us understand that with all those changes and for the new colonial forest rules and acts that were being implemented, how people, especially the tribals, the forest dwellers, were reacting to that and how the rebellion was led. Today, similar study of what we did in India's context we'll do with Java. So let's get started and look at the topics that we'll be covering today. Okay? Ma'am, aren't we doing Forest Society and Colonialism? Of course, Tarun, that's what we are doing. This is the last session of that chapter. That's what I said, right? Did I say anything else? Chalo, so the concepts that we'll cover is going to be forest management by Dutch and Java. So guys, how Britain had basically colonized in India. It was the Dutch people who had colonized over Java. तो वहाँ पे जो है colonial government Britishers की नहीं थी, Dutch की थी, ठीक है. Then we'll talk about the tribes of Java, because it's not just that the tribes have only existed in India, okay. It's just something that is found in India where you find forest dwellers, people who are so close to the nature, their culture is built as such. There are such tribes present everywhere, every nation across the entire world, where people are very close to the nature, their culture, their tradition, their whole identity is defined by that. Okay, so we'll talk about the Kalangs of Java, who are basically your tribes from there. What was their scientific forestry being practiced? Okay, then we'll also talk about this is a little tricky. So Blandongdiensten system. Then we'll talk about Summon's challenge against the Dutch. We'll talk about war and deforestation. And then we'll talk about the new developments in forestry since 1980. ठीक है, तो जो अब changes conservation के लिए किए गए वो भी हम समझेंगे. Let's start with a quick recap of what we did in the previous session, where we looked at the rebellion that was happening in the forest of Bastar. So we saw that rebellion of forest communities started in India with so many changes that were happening with the Britishers coming in with the new Forest Act and the rules that they were introducing. Communities rebelled and parts of India's struggle it also became part of India's independence struggle. So because it was against the Britishers, their rule, their system, this can be said and in fact included and inculcated with the idea of your struggle for nationalism and independence. Okay? Now, if you talk about the social life of people of Bastar, you'll see that this entire region was divided in multiple villages. However, we see a common culture and set of practices and traditions being followed, despite of the fact that they were, maybe even if they were speaking different languages. Okay? Tarun, it's okay, no worries. And then we saw that a new law was introduced where the Britishers said that they'll reserve and conserve 2/3 of the forest, and then people will have to move out of it. There were a few people who said we cannot move out of there. So they said, fine, you'll form forest villages, but in return, you'll have to work for us for free. ऐसे करके they made a lot of changes, ठीक है? Tarun, I'll talk about that, don't worry. Then Bastar Rebellion in 1910, it was initiated by Dhurwas, involved looting, burning. Gundadhur, for example, was one of the prominent names in this rebellion. However, though, when this whole rebellion was suppressed by Britishers, Gundadhur was never caught. It was suppressed by them. Protests, अगर बात करी जाए forest के बारे में after independence, so we have seen that it's not just that the British government were making certain rules which was segregating the people of the forest from the forest or were harming the forest in general. There are also things that have happened even after the independence where we have not been very cautious or taken very active steps to fix the problems that have existed. So continued exclusion has been there from the forest for a lot of tribes even today's date. Protests halted a World Bank project in 1970s. For example, it was said that remove all the sal trees and plant tropical pine trees so that the pulp can be used to make papers. But the localites and the environmentalists, they started protesting, and that's how it was paused. Otherwise, this is what World Bank has had suggested, right? Hi, Radhe Radhe. Good evening. Welcome to the session. So we see that a lot of things in interest of making money or production of raw materials has not just been associated with colonial times, but has still have been continued even after that. Now, Tarun is asking that why have I not scheduled a session for natural wildlife and vegetation and geography next, and in fact population. So, bache, as per your new rationalized syllabus that has been given by CBSE, it says that natural vegetation, wildlife and vegetation will only be basically used for map work or questions. The questions that is going to be asked in your exam will only be around map marking from this particular chapter. So because the content need not necessarily be taught over there, I thought I'll schedule it after population, क्योंकि population तो आ रहा है पूरा. So let's finish that first on priority. And then natural wildlife and vegetation, we can do the map work and some portions of theory also for our own knowledge later on. Okay, Tarun? So that was the reason. Hi, Badal. Good evening. Now, how would you feel if some strangers entered your home and told you that everything you owned actually belongs to them now? कैसा लगेगा? Actually, just think about it. Forget inside the house, even outside the house, if you have a garden or something like that, and somebody enters and says, all of this land now, me, nothing of this is yours, and I will manage and decide what needs to be done over here, how you guys will behave over here, all of that they start saying will be mine. What if they started charging you fees to use the toilet, or made you pay them money every time you open the refrigerator? If you took food, if you ate the food, did whatever which you were doing in your own house, but you would have to pay this stranger. It is a very weird and a strange idea, right? It sounds very, very off and it doesn't make sense, right? Hi Anjali, good evening. But actually under the Dutch colonial rule, this was the reality for a lot of Indonesians, not just there, anywhere in a colonized country. This is what people were experiencing in general, which is on their own land, that land was taken away by some other person who came from a different country, and they came and just claimed that, okay, all of this now belongs to me, and you, who actually is the owner or has the rights over these resources, will be paying me, who has come from outside and has just taken control, for utilizing all of these resources which originally belongs to you. That was such a bizarre idea, right? ठीक है? हाँ बादल, please. और photo भेज देना, ठीक है? So forests that were once open to all were suddenly off limits. Just like India, similar context you will find, and there were rules and laws created to benefit the Dutch commerce at the expense of local villagers. Come, let us explore what were the laws in Java. ठीक है? तो बच्चे, Java is basically a small island in Indonesia. It is known for its rice production. Anyways, it's an island country, so you not country basically, because it's an island, we understand the fact that island anyways is more rich in terms of the kind of vegetation and wildlife that it has. Plus it is a tropical island, yeah. तो tropical वाले जगह पे तो फल फूल सब्जियां सब बहुत varieties की मिलती हैं. So what we understand in simple words is that it is going to be very, very rich in vegetation. ठीक है, दिस इज समथिंग दैट इज गोइंग टू बी वेरी वेरी रिच इन वेजिटेशन, चाहे वो डाइवर्सिटी के टर्म्स में हो या अमाउंट के टर्म्स में हो, वेराइटीज के टर्म्स में हो या क्वांटिटी के टर्म्स में हो. हिस्टोरिकली दिस आइलैंड वाज कवर्ड बाय मोस्टली फॉरेस्ट. सो व्हाट डू वी अंडरस्टैंड? एज आई टोल्ड यू, रिच इन वेजिटेशन, so it will always be having most of its part basically covered under the forest. And that's how it got discovered, and Dutch colonists started taking the idea and implementation of forest management in Java. That colonized Indonesia. अब वो क्या करेंगे? ठीक है ठीक है बादल, I'll keep waiting. तो उन्होंने similarly, what did Dietrich Brandis do with us? He became the first Inspector General of Forest. He brought new rules. He implemented the forest services, and then he started protecting the whole forest, creating scientific forestry ideas and implementation of those ideas. Same thing is going to be happening over here. They will start managing the forest. Nature को manage करेंगे. Why? So that it could benefit them, what they need to grow, how much they need to grow, how much they need to cut it, how much they need to protect it. All of that will basically fall under management. So this island had many villages in its fertile plains. So what do we understand? The soil was very good. It was very, very fertile, right? It had very fertile plains. So naturally a lot of settlements would be around. कई सारे लोग, कई सारे सेटलमेंट्स होंगे, और ऐसा था कई सारे गांव जो थे वहाँ इन एंड अराउंड थे. अ लॉट ऑफ माउंटेन कम्युनिटीज प्रैक्टिस शिफ्टिंग कल्टिवेशन एज वेल. व्हाई? बिकॉज गाइज दीज वर द प्लेसेस वेयर यू वुड फाइंड अ लॉट ऑफ ट्राइबल्स, अ लॉट ऑफ फॉरेस्ट ड्वेलर्स स्टेइंग, राइट? फॉरेस्ट ड्वेलर्स यानी कि आदिवासीज, फॉरेस्ट में ड्वेल करने वाले, पीपल हु स्टे लिव इन फॉरेस्ट, पीपल हुज कल्चर इज डिराइव्ड फ्रॉम फॉरेस्ट. आदिवासीज जो होते हैं, ठीक है, या वनवासी जो होते हैं, इनको ये सारे नामों से हम जानते हैं. So they used to stay there. There was a lot of settlement, and because these people used to stay there, shifting cultivation becomes a very common part of their tradition and their living style. Shifting cultivation we have already done in the previous session, where we have understood shifting cultivation is where you clear a patch of a land, of a forest, और वहाँ पे you burn whatever roots and stems are remaining, the stubbles are remaining. In the ashes itself you sow the seed right before the monsoon. Monsoon will give the water required to the seed, and by winter's onset the cultivation will be harvested. जो cultivation हुआ है उसको तैयार करके काट करके रख लेंगे. It's mostly done for your own consumption. Doesn't involve a lot of labor. Family members ही labor कर रहे होते हैं. They only produce it with the whole idea of not trading in it. So they may grow multiple crops on a small patch of land itself to suffice their requirements and needs with old tools, no new ideas, no extra capital investment, and they're very much dependent on nature, because again, no investment in terms of growing the production very very high, like irrigation and fertilizer, ये सब कुछ नहीं है, completely dependent on nature. So same thing was happening over here also. Shifting cultivation चल रहा था. Now shifting cultivation in general we have understood will always be a threat to and a problem for colonial government, because when they want to protect the forest, use the resources only for themselves, we have seen that they won't be able to collect taxes. We have seen that forest fire ka dar will always be there, which is, this one fact is actually a legit understanding, but some precautions can be taken over here instead of just completely banning it, right? And third, most importantly, whatever they were growing, they didn't want it to be compromised, because there were a bunch of people who were clearing the land to produce food for themselves, right? So Kalangs of Java, they are skilled woodcutters and shifting cultivators. तो Kalangs कौन है? जो एक tribe रहता था वहाँ पे जावा में, उनका नाम Kalangs है. Kalangs जो है, they are skilled woodcutters. They would make very good, because of their entire entire community staying in and around the forest all the time. They had a lot of strength. They knew how to take maximum amount of wood out of the trees. And they were very good with wood in general, and it ran in their genes, you could say. और shifting cultivation practice करते थे, तो जंगल को काटना, लकड़ी को काटना, लकड़ी से चीज़ों को बनाना, और shifting cultivation करना is what they used to do. And also they were They had expertise in harvesting teak for royal palace construction. So monarchy was there before, राजा रहते थे वहाँ, राजा के कंस्ट्रक्शन के लिए जो लकड़ी चाहिए थी उसके लिए टीक, गुड क्वालिटी टिम्बर, गुड क्वालिटी वुड भी बहुत अच्छे से हार्वेस्ट करते थे. दे न्यू द नैक ऑफ इट, दे न्यू व्हाट वाज रिक्वायर्ड. उनको उनको पता था कि क्या करना है, कि बढ़िया ग्रो करेगा, ज़्यादा ग्रो करेगा. Now Dutch started controlling this place from 18th century, aiming to make the Kalangs work for them. So they first take control of the jungle, they want the wood. और फिर ये सोचते हैं कि इन वुड कटर्स को भी अपने लिए काम कराएंगे. ठीक है, इनसे हम अपना काम निकलवाएंगे, बिकॉज दे नीड द वुड टू बी कट, दे नीड इट टू बी पुट ऑन द ट्रांसपोर्टेड, put up, it has to be lifted and put on the vehicles and all of these things. They were very much in plan to take these people under themselves and make them work, but that is not going to be easy. Why would they agree? वो क्यों मानेंगे? ठीक है, तो 1717 में 1770 1770, so 18th century we know that they started ruling this place, which is beginning of 1701 1702. ठीक है, 1770 में कालंग्स जो हैं they started resisting by attacking a Dutch fort at Joanna. So they also had a rebellion. They didn't want to work for them. They didn't want them there at all. तो इन्होंने क्या किया, एक फोर्ट को अटैक कर दिया जोआना में कि भैया सुनो, अगर तुम यही करते रहोगे तो हम तुम पे अटैक करेंगे, हम अपना रिबेलियन और रिवोल्ट जो है वो दिखाएंगे. ठीक है, Dutch successfully suppressed the Kalang uprising, but it was not successful. They came under the control and suppression of the Dutch very easily, immediately. 19th century में अब ये क्या करते हैं, they will now start implementing. So 19th century क्या हुआ बच्चों? So understand the timeline. They come, let's say they came around 720s to 30s. ठीक है, बेसिकली 1750s तक अब जो है वो इस जगह को कंट्रोल में लेने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. दे आर एक्सप्लोरिंग एवरीथिंग, दे आर अंडरस्टैंडिंग एवरीथिंग. By 1770 they decide that we are going to take the Kalangs to work for ourselves, which they do not agree to, and they have a revolt. ठीक है, अब ऐसे करके ये वाली सेंचुरी खत्म हो जाती है. दिस सेंचुरी स्टार्ट्स गेटिंग ओवर. नाउ साइंटिफिक फॉरेस्ट्री, फॉरेस्ट लॉ मेकिंग, ऑल ऑफ दिस इज हैपनिंग वर्ल्ड वाइड नाउ. अब पूरी दुनिया में धीरे 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 ये हो रहा है, स्पेशली इन द कॉलोनीज. फॉर एग्जाम्पल ब्रिटेन की बात कहीं केस ले लेते हैं इंडिया में अगर, तो ब्रिटेन में भी हमने देखा है कि अराउंड 1865 दे स्टार्टेड इम्प्लीमेंटिंग द सेम आइडियाज ओवर हियर इन इंडिया. So naturally these ideas were spreading across also, that the colonizers who need a lot of wood for railway construction, it was not just in India that they were constructing the railway. Everywhere the colonizers for trading purposes needed the railways, they needed the wood, they needed to have any colony that is there. They are big countries, and in order to have their strength maintained, they will have to maintain a good navy, and to build those ships they will require the wood. तो चाहे किसी भी कॉलोनियल गवर्नमेंट की बात कर लो, जो कहीं पे भी है, जहाँ पे भी उन्हें लकड़ी मिल रही है, वो उसको निकालने की भरपूर कोशिश करेंगे. एंड एज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ विच ऑल ऑफ देम विल हैव टू फाइट विद द लोकलाइट्स, बिकॉज आई टोल्ड यू ट्राइब्स हर जगह होते हैं, लोगों की डिपेंडेंसी जंगलों पे हर जगह होती है. बट अब ये सरकार सब कुछ अपने लिए बचाना चाह रही है, तो वो क्या करेगी, साइंटिफिक फॉरेस्ट्री भी प्रैक्टिस करेगी टू मेक इट यूजफुल, द जंगल यूजफुल एज पर देयर रिक्वायरमेंट, सूटेबल एज पर देयर रिक्वायरमेंट. एंड प्लस दे विल ऑल्सो इम्प्लीमेंट द फॉरेस्ट लॉज, ताकि वो जो लोकलाइट्स वहां पे रहने वाले हैं उनको दूर रख सके जंगल से, है ना. हाय उदित, वेलकम टू द सेशन, गुड इवनिंग. हाँ जी बादल, वैसे तो मुझे पता है कि आप मुर्गा बन के नहीं बैठे हो, बट आपकी मर्जी है, उठ जाओ. Now restrictions were there, villagers नहीं जा सकते थे फॉरेस्ट में. Wood were only could be taken for specific purposes. So you'll see it is exactly like how it was happening in India, and this is exactly how it was happening everywhere where colonizers were there. And of course, if somebody did dare to go and take the wood against the law, they were punished severely for these unauthorized, you can say illegal activities also they would consider this as. तो किसी को भी अलाउड नहीं था. Now let's quickly answer the question. The Dash enacted forest laws in Java, restricting villagers' access to forests. Who were these colonizers? कौन सी colonies यहाँ पे बनी हुई थी? Okay, guys. Mohammad Rehan, perfect answer, correct timing, good job. Evelyn and Tarun ने भी सही जवाब दे दिया है. I'm waiting for Agastya, Arun, Bala Suryan and Drushti to answer, guys. Which government, which was the colony that was ruling Java and making the forest laws, not letting the tribes over there, Kalangs को control करना चाहते थे. Who were they? And Augusta and Arun have also answered it was the Dutch, right? कौन थे? Dutch थे. Britishers तो यहाँ पे थे. तो locals को Dutch दूर रखते थे. Locals could not access the forest. If they tried to do that against the rule and the regulation, they were severely punished. Now talking about the Blanc-Dong-Diestine system. ये बहुत simple system था. This was a system which even Britishers were trying to create over here in India, which was just simple as that the jungle is mine as your colonial ruler. If you want to stay in the jungle, if you want to use the jungle, you will have to pay me. But I will not take money because that I'm making from the jungle. You give me free labor and work for me. So what was basically creation of forest village in India was this system of Blanc-Dong-Diestine in Indonesia, in Java, where the land would belong to only the British, only the Dutch, and people who wanted to stay there will have to give free labor. So introduction of rents on cultivated forest land was simply given. They simply said कि आप कहीं पे भी किसी भी तरह का cultivation कर रहे हो, whatever you're growing, you'll have to pay taxes, you'll have to pay revenue. Even with the shifting cultivation happening in the jungle. ठीक है? बादल, आप मेरे नाम से सर्च करो, you'll find me. You search Ankana or Rohan, you'll be able to find me. Exemptions from rents for villages providing free labor and buffaloes for cutting and transporting the timber is this system. So what is happening? जंगल में जो भी growth हो रहा है, cultivation हो रहा है, they are saying you will have to give me revenue for it because you're using my jungle. And ideally the jungle doesn't belong to them, the jungle belongs to the people. But they're simply saying कि अगर आप कुछ भी यहाँ पे कर रहे हो, ठीक है, cultivated forest land पे आप कुछ सामान ले रहे हो, कुछ भी कर रहे हो, you'll have to pay me rent, you'll have to pay me taxes, you'll have to pay me rent. People were going to struggle with that. Then they said fine, we will waive off the rent, हम आपका rent हटा देंगे, but in return you give me two things, your labor for free and also lend me your buffaloes, so that see, what would the buffaloes do? They would lift the wood, they would carry the wood, transportation में transport तक ले जाने के लिए, उसको वहाँ पे load करने के लिए, the buffalo would be useful. So they said you give us free labor and buffaloes for cutting off the wood, for transportation of the wood, for lifting of the wood, and this system is what was known as Blanc-Dong-Diestine system in Indonesia, in Java. जहाँ पे rent के बदले वो क्या कह रहे हैं, हमें free labor और अपना बफेलो दे दो, ठीक है. अब लोग तो नेचुरली परेशान हो रहे हैं, they were getting troubled because of this and they were not going to just sit with their hands on hands. So Surontiko Samin, who was from Randublatung village, contested state ownership of the forest. He argued that state didn't create natural elements like wind, water, earth, wood, so they cannot own them. So you're understanding what he's doing? So Samin basically comes and he challenges the new rule and the laws. He says, fine, I understand that you're trying to implement all of these restrictions, rules, regulations and limitations. ठीक है, hi PS, good evening. Welcome to the session. तो जैसे मैं बता रही थी कि यहाँ पे अब क्या होता है कि सामिन जी आते हैं, ठीक है. What is his full name? His name is Surontiko Samin. He's from one of the villages. The name of the village is Randublatung. ठीक है, तो Randublatung से ये आते हैं और ये कहते हैं कि fine, I understand that you're imposing this law, you're imposing this restriction, आप ये सब चीजें कर रहे हो. But I have a very simple question to ask. You can only stop us from entering these, using these, or charge us rent, or charge us taxes, or whatever, when this ownership is yours. जब आपकी ओनरशिप होगी, जब ये आपको बिलोंग करेगा. पर ना आपने हवा बनाई, ना आपने नेचर बनाया, ना आपने ज़मीन बनाई, ना आपने ये फॉरेस्ट बनाया, तो आप इसको ओन कैसे कर सकते हो? आप इस पे अपना हक कैसे जमा सकते हो? He's very simply saying that when you have no contribution in the creation of what nature has done, so how can you claim it to be yours and exert your right on it when nature has done it and nature is offering it to everybody? Nature to sabko de raha hai. So now he challenges the government, their rules, their regulations and their whole system. This gave rise to a widespread movement. सबको इसमें बड़ा लॉजिक लगता है कि यार ये बंदा तो बिल्कुल सही कह रहा है, हम इतना रेंट भर भर के फ्री लेबर बफे लो, ये वो, जंगल में नहीं जाना है, परेशानी, ना खाना बनाने के लिए लकड़ियां मिल रही हैं, ना कोई फॉरेस्ट प्रोड्यूस मिल रहा है, हमारी जो जिंदगी है, लाइवलीहुड है, वो पूरी उलट पलट हो गई है। और ये बंदा आकर के कितनी काम की बात कह गया कि दिस डजंट इवन बिलोंग टू यू, इट बिलोंग्स टू द नेचर, व्हाई आर यू स्टॉपिंग अस? सो एवरीवन नाउ जॉइन्स हिज मूवमेंट, ठीक है। And Saminists' protest included lying on their land during Dutch surveys, refusal to pay taxes, fines or perform labor in defiance of Dutch authority. So in simple words, whatever the rules were, they would go simply against it, kind of what do you say, disobedience movement, civil disobedience movement जैसा, where they would simply disobey the orders, सीधा सीधा ऑर्डर्स को नहीं मानेंगे, डिसरिगार्ड कर देंगे। आपने बोला टैक्स दो, विल नॉट पे टैक्स। आपने बोला फ्री लेबर दो, हम नहीं करेंगे फ्री लेबर। तुम्हें जो चाहिए, तुम जो मांग रहे हो, हम वो नहीं करेंगे, ठीक है। प्रशांत सुथार, हाँ जी बोलिए, व्हाट डू यू वांट टू नो? आपका जो भी डाउट है बता दो। सो दिस इज हाउ दे वर बेसिकली प्रोटेस्टिंग अगेंस्ट देम, ठीक है। यस, ओके, चलो जल्दी से इस क्वेश्चन को आंसर कर दो। Who led the movement against the state ownership of the forests in Java? Surontiko Samin, Surontikai Samin, Saromo और सारोमोकाई, ठीक है। काफी फनी नाम है यहाँ पे बहुत सारे वैसे तो। Okay, so we have Evelyn and Tarun who have answered absolutely correct. बालासूर्यान ने भी अटेम्प्ट लिया है, अगस्त्य और अरुण ने भी अटेम्प्ट लिया है, और दुश्री ने बिल्कुल सही समय पे जवाब दे दिया है। वंडरफुल। अंजलि, मोहम्मद रेहान, बच्चे आप भी अटेम्प्ट ले लो। सुरोंतिको सामिन इज द करेक्ट आंसर, ऑप्शन ए, वेयर ही स्टार्टेड क्वेश्चनिंग कि जब सब नेचर का है तो हाउ कैन यू एक्सर्ट एनी राइट ऑन इट, क्रिएट रूल्स रेगुलेशंस अराउंड इट, ठीक है। एंड तरुण, टू आंसर योर क्वेश्चन, बच्चे, not exactly Denmark, it seems like the Dutch were from Denmark, but it's actually Netherlands के जो लोग थे उनको by English with some variations that started happening, उनको डच की तरह जो है आपको एड्रेस किया जाता है। सो टेक्निकली नेदरलैंड्स बेल्जियम वाली पॉपुलेशन, ठीक है। सो बेल्जियम की तरफ वाली पॉपुलेशन, इसीलिए आप वहाँ पे भी देखोगे कि बहुत सारे डच स्पीकर्स है। सो डच इज बेसिकली लैंग्वेज के टर्म्स में, it's not any origin per se. So he was from Randoblatung village. He challenged them and that spread as a big movement across everywhere. Now the First World War starts. War शुरू हो जाता है. So war has affected India also. प्रशांत, बिल्कुल सही जवाब दिया है आपने, परफेक्ट। ठीक है बादल, कर लूंगी, ठीक है। वॉर एंड डिफॉरेस्टेशन, अब फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर शुरू होता है, 1914 आ गया है। 1914 इज वेयर द फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर बिगिंस। नाउ वॉर वुड रिक्वायर मोर शिप्स एंड आर्म्स एंड एमिनेशंस, ये सब चीजें चाहिए होंगी। फर्स्ट एंड सेकेंड वॉर हैड वेरी सिग्निफिकेंट इम्पैक्ट ऑन फॉरेस्ट. So in general, from what was being destroyed, you guys, we also have to understand that there was it is really sad when you get to know how the war would affect the wildlife and the vegetation, which means what nature had created. But more than anything, what you have to understand is when the wars were happening, everyone wanted to be more powerful, have everything that they could best in best capacity to fight the war and have and come from a position of strength. कि जितना कुछ बेस्ट मैनेज हो सकता है, आर्म्स हो, एमिनिशंस हो, रेलवेज हो, शिप्स हो, ठीक है, हमारे पास बेस्ट होना चाहिए, मैक्सिमम होना चाहिए, और उस चक्कर में और जंगलें कटेंगी और पेड़ गिरेंगे, ठीक है. So Dutch implemented a scorched earth policy in Java during the wars, where they destroyed sawmills and burned large stacks of teak logs. After the war, Indonesian Forest Service faced challenge in reclaiming this land. Why was this happening? So basically when Dutch were moving out, ठीक है, तो होता क्या है कि इंडोनेशिया पे डच ने कैप्चर करके रखा हुआ है. Japan is very close to them. When the war is happening, these two are fighting on the other sides, either sides, ठीक है. एक तरफ से डच लड़ रहे हैं और एक तरफ से जापानीज लड़ रहे हैं. Now Japanese were basically able to successfully take this area under control. Now when they would have taken it under control, all these resources would have now started belonging to them and would have helped them in being more powerful and resourceful. अब अगर ये पूरा सामान, मतलब ऐसा समझो कि मैंने लड़ाई के लिए पूरा खजाना अपना यहाँ छुपा के रखा हुआ है, मैं हार रही हूँ, तुमने मेरे को यहाँ मेरे घर से भगा दिया, पर मेरे घर में जो पूरा खजाना रखा है वो अब तुम्हारे हाथ लग जाएगा, तो तुम्हारी तो स्ट्रेंथ और बढ़ जाएगी ना. मैं तो एक तो मेरा खो रहा है, मेरे हाथ से छूट रही है चीजें, बट वो उल्टा तुम्हें मिल जा रही है. ऐसा भी नहीं है कि चलो सिर्फ मुझे नहीं मिल रही है, तुम्हें मिल जा रही है, तो आई विल बिकम आई विल फॉल इन अ वेरी वेरी वीक पोजिशन. So what they decided was कि जो मेरा नहीं वो किसी का नहीं. If it doesn't belong to me, it should not belong to anybody is what the Dutch decided, and they started destroying the jungles altogether by putting it on fire. सीधा सीधा जंगलों में आग लगा दे रहे थे कि जो भैया जापानीज है उनके लिए कुछ बचे ही नहीं. So Japanese occupied the region in 1942 and they also exploited the forest for their own industries later on. So it's very sad कि पहले एक तो उनको लगा कि जापानीज को ना मिले, कुछ बचे नहीं, सब हम खत्म करके निकल जाएं, लेकिन उसके ऊपर से जब जापानीज आते हैं तो वो भी जो थोड़ा बहुत बचा हुआ था उसको फुल एक्सप्लॉइट करते हैं, बिकॉज दैट्स व्हाट पीपल हैव बीन डूइंग, राइट. बट लेट्स सी कि क्या जो आज़ादी हो गई, ठीक है, आफ्टर पीपल वर फ्री, आफ्टर डेवलपमेंट्स वर मेड, did we rectify our mistakes or did we just keep going after the wood and the forest and the vegetation on and on? So we know, guys, that in the 20th century, especially after the First and the Second World War, people did evolve and understand the importance of all the natural resources, its conservation, and now saving the world, saving the environment. So 1980s onwards, हमने देखा है कि government saw conflicts arising from separation of forest communities from the forest. So they realized that the forest dwellers are there because it is helping them from, the nature is helping them, that's correct, but they are also helping the nature. So in order to protect the nature, take care of it, we need to ensure कि nature जहाँ के साथ जो है ये इन लोगों को भी आप रहने दो. Conservation of forest became the priority rather than collection of timber. At conservation के लिए, in fact, you need sometimes people to be there who are actually associated, so deeply involved with the nature and the forest. So local involvement in forest conservation was recognized. A lot of times it is seen that it doesn't matter what schemes are started, what programs are started for, you know, conserving the vegetation. A lot of times you cannot protect the forest until localites are involved. देखो, सरकार अपने लेवल पे जो है बेस्ट करती है प्रोग्राम्स और स्कीम्स चालू करके, बट एट अ वेरी ग्रास रूट लोकल लेवल ऑन द फील्ड वेयर द जंगल इज, you can't basically go there and monitor all the time that nobody is stealing wood, nobody is cutting the tree, nobody is harming the plants, nobody is harming the animals. ये हम इंश्योर नहीं कर सकते. आप कितने भी रिसोर्सेज लगा लो, आप इतने बड़े बड़े जंगलों में पूरे टाइम हर चीज पे नजर नहीं रख सकते हो. So here the localites, the people who are staying there, play the most important role. जो वहाँ रह रहे हैं उनकी नजर हमेशा बनी रहती है, and they know their area. They know when somebody is trying to interfere with it. They know when somebody is trying to take something away from it, and they stop it and control it, and that's how they play a very important role in the whole process of conservation. तो इसीलिए सरकार ने भी इस चीज़ को रियलाइज़ किया है और उनको बहुत ज़्यादा स्ट्रॉन्गली जो है इन्वॉल्व किया है in many parts of India, thick forest managed to survive because villagers over there have conserved them in sacred groves such as the Sarnas, Devara Kudu, Kan, Rai, etc. तो कई जगह पे आप ये देखोगे कि जो thick forest exist कर पा रहे हैं, that's because the people over there worship them. ठीक है, क्योंकि उन्होंने realize किया, उन्होंने क्या किया, they worship them and thinks that becomes a symbol of your religion, of something that you believe as a superpower. So you tend to protect it more than anything else. और इसीलिए इतने जंगल रह पाए क्योंकि उसकी पूजा की जा रही है, उसको सेक्रेड माना जा रहा है. विलेज पेट्रोल देयर ओन फॉरेस्ट इंस्टेड ऑफ रिलाइंग सोनली ऑन गार्ड्स. सो दे डोंट ट्रस्ट द गार्ड्स. दे लाइक वो करते होंगे कुछ, पर ये मेरा जंगल है, आई हैव टू प्रोटेक्ट इट. There is like double security, and we see the contribution of the localites over here, exploration of diverse forest management approaches by local communities and environmentalists. So even the government has now started taking help from the local people because it's more easy to use the people who are already there instead of putting in more resources and still not being successful. These are the people who are more aware, who know what to do, who are aware of what needs to be protected, what changes are happening, and they take a lot of initiatives also. So let's quickly answer this question. Since the 1980s, the government prioritized the collection of timber instead of forest conservation. Is this true or is this false? 1918 और 1980 onwards हमने देखा है कि सरकार ने ये कोशिश की है, ये प्रायोरिटाइज करने की कोशिश की है कि लकड़ी जो है वो ज़्यादा कलेक्ट हो सके और फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन को पे ज़्यादा ध्यान नहीं दिया है. इज दिस ट्रू और इज दिस फॉल्स? Okay, guys. And we have Arun and Evelyn. Correct answer, perfect timing. Good job. Agastya and Tarun have also answered correctly. And Mohammad Rehan has taken an attempt. Bala Suryan, Drushti and Nitin waiting for you guys to answer. The correct answer, guys, is false. It was the other way around. They were trying to protect it and not, focus on collection of wood and timber. Right? Syan study. Good evening. Morning nahi hai bacche. ठीक है. डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन किस चीज की बात कर रहे हो? डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन, पॉलिटिकल डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन की बात कर रहे हो तो इट्स नॉट अबाउट प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ फॉरेस्ट. ठीक है, समझ आया? अगर फॉरेस्ट को प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन क्या होता है बच्चे? इट्स बेसिकली डिविजन ऑफ पावर. इफ दैट्स व्हाट आई एम अंडरस्टैंडिंग दैट यू आर आस्किंग. डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन मीन्स डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ पावर. एक सेंटर से अलग अलग सेंटर्स में बांटना, एक सेंटर में उसको कॉन्सेंट्रेट नहीं करना, डिवाइड करना, पावर शेयर करना. दैट इज डन फॉर बेटर अप्रोच एंड डेमोक्रेसी. Okay, chalo. So let's quickly summarize. So what we have understood is that Java's history included Dutch forest management and shifting cultivation. ठीक है, कालंग्स जो थे वहाँ के बहुत पुराने tribes थे and they were skilled with teak harvesters who resisted the Dutch control. Dutch enforced forest laws with rents and basically implemented a system of the Blandong-Diestien system where they said rents will be waived off if you give me free labor and buffalo in the wood cutting and transportation. Communists protested Dutch actions and taxation by questioning that when they have not created the nature, how can they show ownership on the nature and conserve things for themselves and not let other people use it and charge rent from them. World War I and II caused a lot of significant forest destruction in Java. Since the 1980s, a shift towards forest conservation and local involvement has emerged, emphasizing sacred groves, community patrols and diverse forest management. ठीक है? Okay. So with this, we have finished this session. अब बच्चों please make sure कि आपका जो है you have logged into the Embibe app or website and chosen your goal. When you go on home, you will be able to see all the upcoming live classes ठीक है, जैसे कि ये वाला सेशन जो है ये हमारा अभी चल रहा है. सो प्लीज़ मेक श्योर दैट यू आर रजिस्टर्ड विद दीज सेशंस. एंड ये और भी हमारे टीचर्स के हैं सेशंस जो आने वाले हैं, जैसे कि आप देख सकते हो. और प्लीज़ दीज आर दी अपकमिंग क्लासेस इन द नेक्स्ट 7 days. जैसे कि हम क्लाइमेट के मोस्ट आस्क्ड क्वेश्चंस करने वाले हैं कल. दिस इज़ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज क्लाइमेट इज़ वन चैप्टर जिससे हम बहुत ज़्यादा कंफ्यूज हो जाते हैं. हमें नहीं पता है क्या आंसर करना है, क्या पढ़ना है, क्या करना है. जस्ट गो एंड गेट योर सेल्फ रजिस्टर्ड फॉर दिस सेशन. आपको और भी आने वाले सेशंस दिखेंगे, जैसे पॉपुलेशन साइज एंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन, पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ एंड चेंजेस इन द पॉपुलेशन. जस्ट मेक श्योर दैट यू गेट रजिस्टर्ड फॉर ऑल ऑफ दीज सेशंस. ठीक है, एंड Embibe लेंस के ऐप को डाउनलोड कर लो. आई थिंक तरुण, that one student that I can see registered is probably you. So guys, while you are on the app, please make sure you already get registered. And Embibe lens ज़रूर check out करें ना. Very very interesting, very interactive app. And do not forget to connect with us on the Telegram channel. This is the link and this is your QR code. ठीक है? Yeah, Tarun, I thought so. Okay. So guys, with this we have basically finished forest, society and colonialism. As you just saw, tomorrow we'll be practicing questions from climate. So please make sure to be there, same time, same place. I'll see you. And then we'll start with the chapter of population from next week onwards. अगले हफ्ते से हम population chapter शुरू कर रहे हैं, तो वो finish कर लेंगे. And then soon by the end of November हम हमारा पूरा ही syllabus जो है वो wind up कर लेंगे. We are hardly left with anything anymore. उसके बाद हम थोड़ा मैप वर्क, प्रैक्टिस एंड फुल रिविजन विद द आइडिया ऑफ बीइंग प्रिपेयर्ड फॉर आवर एग्जाम्स विल गेट स्टार्टेड. ठीक है, तो चलो विद दिस आई एम गोइंग टू से बाय एंड थैंक यू सो मच एंड वाइंड अप दिस सेशन. हमने फॉरेस्ट, सोसाइटी एंड कोलोनियलिज्म कर लिए. फिर से याद दिला दे रही हूँ, स्टूडेंट्स वॉचिंग द सेशन ऑन यूट्यूब, do not forget to like the video, share the video with your friends and subscribe to the channel. Do tell me in the comment section कि आपको कैसा लगा सेशन. और for the rest of you, make sure you're registered for the upcoming classes. Guys, till the next time I see you, have a great evening, good night, take good care of yourselves and your loved ones. Hasta la vista, bye-bye, ciao, stay tuned and keep imbibing.
Keep imbibing. We believe in you.